Okay, that'll work.
Splice it all together.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll continue what I did last week. Last week we went through a lot of the details of just Genesis 1:1 in the beginning. Talked about basically the universe, the galaxies, the solar system, planets, creation, and some of the differences between evolution and creation, and how we can really believe that God exists. He's given us a lot of evidence of that just in the things we see around us and how complicated everything is. Even if we try, we have a lot of understanding now. As time goes by, we get more understanding, we learn more, we research, figure things out. But also along with that, we're also discovering more and more of the things that God tells us about in the Bible, which is more evidence that the Bible is true and it is correct. So instead of, since I went through a lot of that detail last week, we'll actually go through the verses of creation. Now, Genesis 1:1 through Genesis 2:3 is what we're going to be covering. I might get a couple other verses out of the Bible in some different places too. But I'm going to try and get through this whole thing. I had to take out a lot of the detail stuff that I would have had last week to try and make sure I cover all this. Hopefully, I don't whiz through it and have it done in 10 minutes and be sitting here looking at the clock wondering what I'm going to do.
We can't see the clock.
Yeah, okay, that works for me. Okay, so in Genesis 1:1, of course, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So we're going to continue from there, and there, verse 2, it says, "And the earth was without form and void." So there was nothing on it. It was just, probably a round sphere in space. And then, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So the thought there is it was a water world. Of course, there's mass, there's iron, there's all the sand, everything was here, but the whole face of the world was probably covered with water at that time. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So I've read a lot of different thoughts on that, but God was moving on the face of the waters, meaning he was encompassing the earth, looking at it, possibly, thoughts, deciding what he was going to do with it. We don't really know. That's hard to figure out. Pastor might be able to explain that one a little bit more. I didn't find anything that was real clear and made sense to me, so I'm not going to get into that one too far. But from there, in verse 3, it says, "And God said, Let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness." So in 3, it says, God said, "Let there be light," and there was. Now for me, a long time ago when I read this, and even even a few years ago, maybe, whatever, this was a little confusing to me because it says, "And God said, Let there be light." Well, when we think of light, we got the sun. Okay, but then when you read further down, God didn't create the sun and the moon until the 4th day. And I'm going, well, wait a minute here. Where's this light come from? If he didn't, what is this light? So I did a little research on it, and coming up, well, the light is God. God is the light. Now, remember last week we talked about the light spectrum, and it's possible that the light, that God is the light. Well, he is the entire light spectrum. He understands it, sees it all. We only see a portion of it. So, and God said, "Let there be light." The light that he's going to let us see, he's probably creating, allowing that part of the spectrum that we can see. That's possibly the light that he's talking about. But God is the light. He's the light of our life, also in the light unto our path. Let's see here. Let's look up Daniel 2:22. Hopefully I got these written down here right. Oh, looks like I got somebody else pulling in. Let's see, where's Daniel at here? Daniel 2:22. Okay, it says here in Daniel 2:22, it says, "He revealeth the deep and the secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth within or with him." That's a verse basically explaining he is the light. And then he reveals all dark things. The deep, he was revealing what was in the deep. He was really revealing things to us also. And he can also reveal what's in our hearts. He understands what's there. How you doing? Come on in. Let's see here. We're in Genesis 1. Okay, let's go to John 8:12. John 8, verse 12, says, Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. So God is the light. He's telling us right there, Jesus is telling us right there, he is the light of the world. So back in Genesis 3, it says, And God said, Let there be light. And there was light. God is the light. This also goes along with the Trinity too, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. All three existed at that time before we did. And something else, which I'll cover a little more later too, one point here where he creates man, it says, let us create man in our image. He said, let us. That's the Trinity, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. So, and then the angels were there before we were also. God created the angels before he did us. Okay. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And I think what this may refer to here, the light and the day, he may have started the earth rotating. So now he's the light, got the earth rotating and creating day and night. Okay, so move into verse 6 of Genesis 1. And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Now this is another one of those points that was kind of confusing to me, because when I think of firmament, I think of the land, that we're standing on, that we build our houses on, and everything else. You got the oceans and you got the land. But what he's referring to here is and God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So he's not dividing the ocean from the ocean. He's dividing the waters below from the waters above. And the waters above, what we believe at that point was probably, at this time we still have clouds. We have waters up there. There's water vapor that's in the clouds. There was a much thicker water vapor, translucent. You could see through it, so you'd be able to see the sun and the moon. But there was a lot more water up there, and that could be a big portion of the water that was brought down during the flood also. A lot of that water came from there, and then during the flood, there was a major uphealing too, because if you read that portion of the Bible where they talk about the flood, it talks about the waters of the deep. And over the last, decade, 20 years, whatever, they have made discoveries that there is more water underground than there is above ground. There's huge reservoirs of water underground. Okay, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. So God's creating our atmosphere, creating a lot of, what we see, but it's different today than what it was. It changed during the flood. Prior to the flood, that firmament, there was no rain also. So the firmament above, it was kind of like a mist, a dew, and that's what watered everything. So prior to the flood, nobody knew what rain was. They'd never seen it, never experienced it. And with the earth being in an environment like that, the whole earth, it was like a greenhouse effect. It would keep the whole earth warm. We didn't have a cold South Pole and a cold North Pole. It's like even right now, you go down to the South Pole, they've extracted cores, and they found that it was tropical. Underneath the South Pole, down deep, they find remnants of tropical plants and things. The whole earth was a tropical environment. And along with that, it would also keep a lot of the x-rays, a lot of the radiations and things that cause us to age, cause us to get wrinkly, cause us to get old, whatever. A lot of that would be kept out, and that would lend to the fact in the Bible that they tell us about long life. Yeah, people live to be 600, 700, 800 years old. So if you're not getting bombarded with all of that radiation, your body doesn't break down as fast. It makes it easier to live. And quite a few years ago, I read about an experiment that somebody did. They took a tomato plant, and they planted it, and they stuck it under a building, or they did something with it, and they shielded this plant so it would not be bombarded with all the radiation, the x-rays and everything that come from outer space. So they had like a lead, surrounding around the housing around this tomato plant, and then they put in their lights, high spectrum lights and things. This tomato plant just kept growing and growing and growing. The thing got huge, and the tomatoes were massive. They were surprised at how much the x-rays, all the radiation and stuff, how they bombard things, yeah. And it breaks our bodies down. From the time we're born, we're growing, but our bodies are also breaking down. And then once we reach a point in our 20s where our body stops, growing, from then on, it's unfortunately decline.
Downhill from there.
Yeah, all downhill. Yeah. Let's see here. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Okay, let's get into the third day. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. So here's where he separates the water, creates the continents, the dry land. And it says, the dry land appear, let me read this again. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. So that kind of leads also to the possibility that the whole earth was a water world. And then letting the dry land appear, there's an upheaval, bringing the land up from below, and maybe the whole earth underneath the water was all flat, or one sphere. He didn't have mountains and valleys and stuff, so he created that. He basically created huge valleys for the water to settle into, huge mountains, which ended up actually being the continents, the dry land above the water. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. I should probably check and see what else I got written over here. Make sure I'm covering everything. Got that. Okay. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. So he's bringing the plants, trees, shrubs, fruit, everything that we eat. And prior to the flood, everybody was probably a vegetarian. After the flood, then he said, okay, you can eat meat. He made, I don't remember exactly where the verses are, but there's something that talks about that when God said that we could have anything. And then this also lends to the idea that when God created the earth, when he created the plants, when he created the trees and everything, the trees probably already had rings. He created the earth as an old earth. It was already, yeah.
The earth brought forth grass, so
Yep.
already had in it.
Yep, already had it here. Yep. And then because we believe that it was a 7-day process from the day one till the day he rested, it's a 24-hour period, which there's a couple of things here that lead to that too. So he created, he may have accelerated the plant growth and stuff to get it started. That's just theory, hypothesis, whatever, but in a 24-hour period, he can do anything he wants. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. So whose seed was in itself? So he already had that built into the plant so they could replicate themselves. They could grow fruit, drop the seeds. Seeds would start regrowing new plants, new grasses, whatever. Yeah, moving right along with this. Going faster than I thought I would.
I've read, there's a couple of people that have
Yep.
this theory, and they read and write Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the Hebrew, where it says there was evening and there was morning,
Mm-hmm.
and they said the literal translation
Yep.
is there was chaos and then there was order.
Yep.
So evening would be the chaos, but morning would bring the order.
Okay.
I think
Yep.
it's very interesting.
That would be. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think I read some things too on the Hebrew too, and they were talking about the name of God and some of the other things too. I didn't get really read into that because I had way more here, but yeah, there's the Hebrew. It is, how the Hebrew words, when you try and translate them and then what they really mean. And some of them have multiple meanings too. So all of those other words that, kind of like the King James uses these, thous, whatever, those are qualifying words.
Yeah.
I imagine Hebrew is probably like that too. You have words and there's qualifiers that make that word mean this if it's one way or mean this if it's another way. So,
We were talking about last time about wouldn't it all be decaying?
mm-hmm.
But then if he brings order.
Yep. Yeah, and the order, there was no decay
There was no.
until Adam and Eve sinned. And then there was death. That's when it started. Yep. Let's see here. And the evening and the morning were the third day. So now we're going to start the fourth day. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. So here's where he's creating the sun and the moon. So he created the plants and the trees and all the grasses and everything else before he created the sun and the moon. Now there's some who try and, they something called gap theory. They say actually every day of creation was thousands of years or hundreds of years or whatever, and he just calls it a day. Well, you can't have that. God, if he's the light, anything could grow, if he's there.
Yeah.
But I believe it's literally a 24-hour period.
I've read that too.
Yeah.
We see a light shift
Mm-hmm.
depending on how far away something is.
Yep.
Apparently there's also a time dilation theory.
Yep.
Where it would be compressed into one day for
Mm-hmm.
God.
Yep.
A day epoch.
Yeah, and time for him is not time the way we see time. Yeah. So, 1,000 years to us is 1,000 years. 1,000 years to him is nothing. Yeah. So in a literal 24-hour day, you wouldn't be able to have the sun being created 1,000 years later because none of the plant life would live unless that was the light of God. Let's see here. So he creates the sun and the moon, divide the day and the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, that's the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, the moon, and he made the stars also. So he created all the other stars we see. This is where he's creating the other galaxies, the other solar systems, all the other bodies that we out in space. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Let's see here. Now, let's see, that's day 4. And I've got a note here too. I had already talked about, some people they ask the question, is there life out there besides us? Okay, I'm going to say yes to that, but the qualifier is that life that we know is God, Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, and the other angels. Seraphims, cherubims, we know, or cherubims? Make sure I get that right. Now, if there's other angels, possibly don't know, but God created the angels before us. So yeah, there is other life, but maybe not as we're thinking life, like us, like the animals, like plant life. The chances of that happening are extremely slim. And I had read one article too that said there's 33 characteristics that are required for life to happen as it has here. But then you take those 33 things. That means the sun just the right heat, the earth just the right distance from the sun, the gravitational pull, and they said they went through all this list of different things for life to occur if you were to believe in evolution. And then you take those 33 things and you try and multiply that out. It was like 10 to the 42nd power times 10 to the 23rd power, and it's just this huge astronomical number of the, is for the life to occur like it has here through an evolutionary process. And then to have another planet out there exactly the same, is pretty slim. Let's see.
Did you ever study Revelation in this church at all? Somewhere in there, I remember there being a question, at the throne of God, where they asked, "Where are you from?"
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember. I've read Revelation, but it's been quite a while ago, and I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember.
John was from Earth,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. It's been so long ago, I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't
But
remember
anyway,
either.
get into
Yeah.
that, I guess.
Yep, that's okay. If anybody's got anything to say, please do. Okay, so God and the angels, Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, they existed before us and before creation. They were here before God created the earth. So the possibility of other life as we know it, pretty slim. And could God have done it? Yeah, it's possible. We don't know. He didn't tell us. I'm sure someday when we either pass away or he comes back and takes us all out of here, he'll reveal everything to us. Now, something else too I thought about, it's like with as much as we know today, if God was right now to reveal to us how he created everything, we probably couldn't handle it. It'd blow our minds. It'd probably be way too much for us to be able to comprehend, what it takes to do that on his level. It's just amazing. Let's see here. Okay, day 5. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day." So here's where God's creating, the fish, the ducks, the geese, the antelope, the deer, dinosaurs, elephants, rhinos, everything. He created all living things except us. He hasn't got to us yet. Let's see here. I had some other stuff. Okay. And then according to, with evolutionists, they say that, things happen over time. You get slow variations and things change, and then you get a new animal. Well, a snake lays an egg and you don't get a duck. It doesn't happen that way. And one thing I like to ask people who are evolutionists, like, okay, you take the fire beetle or the bombardier beetle. It's got these chemicals that it spits out, and they burn their prey or whatever. It's like, those chemicals can be explosive. You've got to have just the right mixture that this bug spits this stuff out. It's like, okay, how many, if you don't do it right, these chemicals are explosive. So it's like, okay, how many of these beetles blew themselves up trying to figure out the right mixture of these chemicals before they finally got it right? It didn't work through evolution. And how did these beetles realize they needed to have a method to capture their prey so they could eat, so they started developing these glands that would spit out these chemicals? They didn't. God created them and gave them the process right to start with. Now there's some dinosaurs too. I don't remember the name of it. There's one specific dinosaur that had this huge head, and there's cavities in that dinosaur's head, and they don't understand what those cavities for. But some people have hypothesized it could be like the bombardier beetle, and it may have had those same process or those chemicals that they would put them out, hence the dragon. Dragons breathe fire. That could be where the thoughts of dragons came from. If they could, yeah, all over the world, there's groups of people in different parts of the world that never interacted from our perspective, at least up until the departure of Babel, and they would see these animals. And they've got depictions of them. You look in caves and stuff, and there's artwork talking about animals and stuff that don't exist today, but yet you've got humans painted on a wall of a cave along with creatures that were clearly dinosaurs. Now there's also, I don't remember where it's at, it's in New Mexico or someplace, they've got petrified footprints of humans and petrified footprints of dinosaurs going up the side of this mountain at the same time, right side by side. So if the dinosaurs existed before man, how do you have this happen?
Somewhere in Genesis it talks about that, I think.
It could be. I don't remember. I know they talk about the Leviathan and the Behemoth in Job. I think, yep. And then people today would try and relate that to the hippo or the elephant or whatever, but the descriptions of the Behemoth and the Leviathan don't match. They don't match. So we figure that they were dinosaurs. That was a description of dinosaurs. And of course, prior to the flood, or actually in the Garden of Eden, there was no fear in animals of man. That didn't happen until after the fall. Let's see here. The kinds. Okay, according to their kind. Again, all animal life is created according to its kind. God deliberately structured plenty of variation within a kind, but one kind does not become another kind. It's like dogs. How many variations of dogs do we have? Lots of them, and it comes through breeding. Of course, dogs, every type of dog that we have can breed with another kind of dog or another breed of dog. They all originated from possibly the wolf. Somebody captured one, you start breeding for specific characteristics, and now we've got the Scotties, now we've got the Black Labs, now we've got the Great Danes, you've got the Chihuahuas, whatever. It's like, okay, we need a dog to do this. You pick a dog that has those features and start breeding that dog. That's kind of what happened at the Tower of Babel. God confounded the language, and people that had stronger genetics in a facial feature of slanted eyes went this way. People who had darker melatonin for black people went that way. Everybody separated around the world. Well, now you have different races of people with different characteristics, but we're all the same kind. Yep, we're all the same species. We're all the same kind. Finches. There's all sorts of kinds of different finches. Well, eventually finches, they all probably started from a main finch, and then you had a finch that went off this way and one went a different way. Well, each one takes a genetic code with them. Might be a slight variation in the genetic code. Over time, our genetics break down also. Our genes are continuously breaking down. That's part of the reason we have different cancers. Well, of course, that could be food and stuff that's put in our food, but as our genetic code breaks down over time, we're more susceptible to certain diseases and cancers and things too. But that goes along with, like the Tower of Babel, you get a group goes this way, something becomes dominant. Well, now you may have finches that have a little bit bigger beak, smaller beak. Might have finches with a purple color, finches with a gold color. Yep, yep. So they kind of separate. But originally, the finch was one kind. It's not through evolution, it's just their genetic code has become dominant wherever. Let's see, already went the dogs. Yeah, we already covered all that. Here's an interesting point. Evolutionist Niall Eldredge wrote, "We paleontologists have said that the history of life in the fossil record supports the story of gradual evolution, all the while knowing that it does not." So he admitted it. He says, this is what we do, this is what we say, but we know that it doesn't support it. It's a big lie. But they keep pushing this big lie because they don't want to believe that God exists and there's somebody greater than us. Somebody who's all-powerful, all-knowing, who knows more than us, and we are going to bow to him one day. And then here it says, the fossil record totally rejects the idea of millions of tiny changes. The quick leaps are a way of attributing miraculous power to chance or nature instead of God, while admiring the faith of those who believe in such hopeful monsters. It seems far more rational to believe in a wise, creating, designing God. Okay, let's move on to the sixth day. What did I do with my other paper? Hang on here. I lost a paper. Well, how did I do that? There it is. Let's get these sheets out of here so I don't mix them up again. Okay, day 6. And God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping. Okay, I got a little ahead of myself, but now he's creating the cattle and the different things, the creeping thing and the beast of the earth after his kind, and it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image. So that's where he says, let us make man in our image. So that's plural, but it stands for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. After our likeness, which means we are made in the image of God, which is very important. That means we have meaning. He thought so highly of us that he made us in his image. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So he gave us discretion, power, gave us the responsibility of taking care of the earth, caring for it, caring for the animals, everything that was here. So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. So he gave us the responsibility, like I said, to take care of the earth. Now this is, go back up here just a little bit. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God created him. Male and female created he them. So he created male and female. Now in chapter 2 of Genesis, starting in verse 4, it says, these are the generations of heavens of the earth when they were created in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Chapter 2, starting in verse 4, is a more detailed account of the creation. Now, what got me looking at Genesis, a few months ago, somebody had mentioned something about Adam and mainly Eve, that Eve was not the first woman. And like, yeah, it's like, huh? That's what I've always been taught. And they, oh no, and then they had gotten this information from somebody else that was telling them, so it was relayed to me, and then, so I decided to do some research on this, like, the Lilith was supposedly the name of the first woman. And I'm like, what is this? This is not right. So I started researching it. Well, this theory was developed, or fable, basically, back in either like the 5th or the 8th century by a group of Jewish people. And what they did is they took Genesis 1 and 2 and they separated them into two different events, which is incorrect because Genesis 2 is a more detailed account of the creation of man and woman. It is not a separate account. So, and even today, there are like Wiccan groups, there are other groups who still believe that that is true, that Lilith was the first woman, and she fell or something happened, and then in Genesis 2, God created Eve. But that's incorrect, because 2 is, after reading 2, you go read 2, and then you apply it back to 1, you come to the realization it's just a more detailed account of Genesis 1. It is not two separate happenings. So I've easily convinced myself, it's like, okay, wherever this is coming from, it's false. I did a little research, found out that it's like I said, it's either 5th or 8th century, somewhere in that time frame, from a Jewish group. But, as usual, the devil creates a lie, and then he builds on that lie, and he finds people who will continue that lie all through the ages, trying to sway people and convince people that God is not the right way to go, that these other things are what happened, and it's just another lie. Okay, so God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. So right at the beginning, God expected us to have children. That was part of marriage, was Adam and Eve. They were the first couple, and he was expected them to have children and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish in the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and then over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. So in the beginning, we were vegetarians. We weren't eating animals. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat, and it was so. So even back at that time, lions, tigers, dinosaurs, everything was a vegetarian. Nothing was eating meat. That didn't happen until after the fall, after sin entered the world. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. So up until this point, God was saying, it is good. It is good. It is good. Well, at this point, he says, it was very good. Let's see, do I have anything else here? Okay, I already covered that. With God creating us, this means human life has intrinsic value, and that's because we were created in God's image, quite apart from the quality of life experiences by an individual, because human life is made in the image of God. Now, something else that differentiates us, mankind alone possesses the personality, morality, and spirituality. And then the part where it says, in our image, there are at least 3 aspects to the idea that we are made in the image of God. It means humans possess personality, knowledge, feelings, and a will. We don't live by instincts. We live by thought and process and thinking. We have a will. He gave us free will also. We're not robots. There's a thinking of preordination, where God has preordained who's going to be saved, who's not going to be saved, who's going to do what every day through their life. Everything's preordained. And that's false too, because it says in the Bible that God gave us, he gave us free will. He doesn't want us to be a robot bowing to him pre-programmed. He wants us to choose him and love him freely. You know, he chooses us and loves us freely, and he wants that in return.
Isn't that what differentiates us from the angels who don't have free will?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. That's something to be figured out. Yeah, I don't know if it really tells us.
Different creatures.
Yeah, yep. They do his bidding. They do other than, well,
But,
the devil,
yeah,
he chose to go against God. So I would say that might be an example. Yeah, they probably have free will too, because they can choose to follow God or they can choose to follow the devil. That's a good point. That's a good question. Made me think about it for a minute. So yeah, I'd say they probably do have free will. Yeah. And where was I here? Okay, and the evening and the morning were the 6 days. We finished that, and we're down to the 7th day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day God ended his work, which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work, which he had made. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work, which God created and made. And that's the example, we use for our 7-day week too. We got the 7 days of creation, the 7th day. Sunday, we call it we come to church and stuff, but we also consider it the day of rest. That's what we call it, because that's the example that God gave us. Okay, and I think that was what I have. Last week, Bill, last week I did go over, I started Genesis 1 last week, but I only got through Genesis 1:1. There was an awful lot to it, just describing it. I was amazed at how much you can take out of the beginning of Genesis and all the thoughts and processes and theories and stuff that people have about it. So I did a lot of detail on Genesis 1, and today just going from Genesis 1:2 all the way through the creation. So that's what I have. I hope it might have been interesting if there was anything in there. I know I learned some more things while I was going through it. I was quite surprised at some of the stuff I dug up. And I was surprised too that just this investigating between Genesis 2 and 1 and this Lilith and this Eve thing, led me. It's like, I need to, and reading the verses of creation, the first few there, be like the heavens, the separating of the waters, and then when the light was created, and it was the light of God first, and the sun and the moon on the 4th day, just kind of detailing and getting that more straight in my mind and understanding it, and just going through it. But
there's so many scientists now that are beginning to realize that all of their study is pointing back to Genesis as well.
yeah, yep. It is. There's more and more. You're just like you said, they're coming back and saying, evolution, just because of how complicated and complex some of these things are that we have around us, even within us, that evolution just couldn't have happened. I know quite a few years ago, have you read anything about the God particle? Yeah, when they found that, and it's actually shaped in the form of a cross, just whether it's coincidence or God meant it. I imagine it's real. Yeah, but yeah, it was just surprising. Anyways, I'm going to pray, and then everybody's welcome to stay for prayer time if you'd like. We got another 10 minutes or so. I'll take some prayer requests too. I guess, was there anything?